Okay, so right now we're focusing on what I think is going to be the MVP of the league this year is Aaron Rodgers. And I think this year's playoffs might be the most important and consequential in his career because he's already going to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. But once you get into that echelon of player, we start comparing you guys on unfair criteria, frankly. And he only has one Super Bowl win. And for him to surpass or be considered as great as guys like Peyton Manning and John Elway, he's going to have to get that second career Super Bowl win. And I think this win would even put him ahead of Manning and Elway because at the end of their careers, they were frankly riding on other things other than their own arm talent. You think about Elway's 2 Super Bowls, those were Terrell Davis's Super Bowls more than John Elway's. You think about Peyton Manning's second Super Bowl, I mean, he hurt that team more than he helped that team throughout that playoff run, honestly. And in that Super Bowl, that defense and Von Miller was the reason why they won the Super Bowl. So if Aaron Rodgers can take his team through this season, win the MVP, and then win the Super Bowl and also win the Super Bowl MVP, very few players can do that, especially at this point in their career. And then the final cherry on top to really make this the season of Aaron Rodgers is if he gets to face off against Patrick Mahomes, the young kid who's only been a starter for 2 seasons and is already considered by some better than Aaron Rodgers and having had a better career than Aaron Rodgers at this point. We don't talk about Aaron Rodgers the same way that we used to, in part because Aaron Rodgers' play waned a little bit, despite the fact that he's come back this year, but also in part because we look at Patrick Mahomes every week. That's doing the type of things that Aaron Rodgers used to do. He's doing them regularly and more often, honestly. So I think this playoffs could be incredible, especially if it ends with Aaron Rodgers over Patrick Mahomes in Tampa Bay.
Sure would be an incredible storyline, especially with the way I think many people were dissing Aaron Rodgers before this season. Lewis, want to bring you in to react.
Yeah, look, I think Aaron Rodgers' legacy is already cemented, but I think Domonique is on to something here as far as it could be elevated. It can really be kind of like cast in gold, in platinum, if this year he is able to go ahead and carry his football team to the Super Bowl, face off in what would be an epic Super Bowl under the most unique conditions we've ever seen in the history of the NFL with the pandemic, and face off against potentially Patrick Mahomes or the Buffalo Bills or whoever comes out of the AFC. Whoever comes out of the AFC is going to be spectacular. But I think for him to go to the Super Bowl, for Aaron to carry this football team, this iteration of this football team to the Super Bowl and to win it, and if he is also able to go ahead and win the MVP of the regular season as well, and then potentially be MVP of the Super Bowl, there's just no doubt. I don't care what happened last year. I don't care the fact that he had only won 1 Super Bowl prior to this. He would be in the conversation, especially for one season, of being one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play this game, if he's not already, which obviously he is. But yeah, this could be those legacy elevating type of seasons and playoff runs for him, no question about it.
I couldn't agree more. He'd be in that conversation, if not better than those guys. Think about that. All right, so let's look at some of the playoff teams and see if they will make a run or be one and done. So, Nick, I'll start with you. Let's talk about the Bucs.
Yeah, this is a good question. It makes it hard because I don't think that they are necessarily going to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl, but they're not going to be one and done. They're going to win at least in the first round of playoffs. So I guess I'm leaning towards Bucs making a run.
Oh, really? Okay. All right, Lou. Can we talk about the Dolphins?
I'm not that confident.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because I'll tell you, look, I have all the respect in the world for what Brian Flores has done this year, but I think it's going to be tough for them to make it into the playoffs because they're going to play a Buffalo team that is hot right now and wants to go into the playoffs, have their last football game, and I just do not see the Indianapolis Colts losing to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I see the Colts getting into the playoffs. I have a strong feeling that Miami is not going to make it, but you never know. It is 2020.
Exactly. Nick, what about the Ravens?
Yeah, the Ravens is another situation like the Bucs. I think that they might end up playing the Steelers in the first round, and they outplayed the Steelers even though they lost to them in that tough game they had earlier this season. So I got the Ravens making a run, I believe. And again, I'm really tepid on these. This is a tough question. I hate these. I hate this type of question where you put it so I have to make a run or one and done. I can't be right.
It's called a good question. All right, Lewis, what about the Steelers?
Yeah, I'm going to lean towards them making a little bit of a run. I think finally they're going to use Week 17 as their bye. Ben needs the break. I think he needs the break both mentally and physically. I think you saw that he still has some left in the tank, especially how they played in the second half against the Colts, that he can still dial it up. Deontay Johnson had a spectacular game. Chase Claypool is a spectacular young weapon. And Mike Tomlin's still one of the best coaches that we have seen in the past, 10, 15 years. And he will have this team ready to go. So I think this is a team that, although we banged on them here late in the season, in the last quarter of the season, that they're going to get recharged and they're going to get into the playoffs and they'll make a little bit of noise.
Nick, we've been talking about this all week. These Steelers, that second half, how they really turned it on. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I want to say Steelers are going to make a run too, but like I just said, there's a chance that they could play the Ravens, who I also just said are going to make a run. How about we change it? Why don't you just ask me, is KC going to be one and done or make a run? I can tell you the answer to that.
That's
an easy question.
If we did that, nobody would watch.
They're going to make a run.
Too easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tough game, but anytime those teams play, it's going to be a close game, and I could see either one of those teams that come out of that game giving their next opponent a real tough fight. But I do believe in both of those teams, which is why I'm going to be watching. It's kind of like the NFC East in that I don't really know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen. Anything could happen between those teams when they play, but they both have the talent and the coaching staff, I think, and the experience to make a run in the playoffs.
Okay, note to the producers. This is the Answer the Question segment for Greeny next week with Neek. Now, Lou, I got to ask you about Big Ben. Look at him. He's ready. Be ready for it, sir. All right, Lou, I want to ask you to put your sort of front office hat on. Big Ben, if he returns next season, he's a $41 million cap hit. So as a former member of the front office,